Here, now, present, in this moment, in every moment, at all times, your wider perspective, that which is a different angle of you, that which is a wider perspective in which you are present in every day, even when you're not aware of it. In other words, even though predominantly you are giving your attention outwards and engaging in reflections with others, providing feedback for others, others providing feedback for you, you always have access to this different perspective of you. And this different perspective of you is you embodied. We'll just keep it there for a moment and let your many questions take the lead. Go ahead.
Guys, unmute yourself when you're gonna speak. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hi, am I up? It's Michelle.
It is you.
Awesome. So my question is, I love that we're all one, but we're also all really unique. And I'm wondering how it seems that my inner being and some other people's inner being gets to break the law of attraction and go ahead and make you feel good when you were trying to feel bad, like Eckhart Tolle on the verge of suicide. Instead, his inner being says, I will give you enlightenment.
Well, that which you're talking about, you can mute yourself now.
Yes.
That which you're talking about is really, how do I get to be in this position of a wider perspective more consistently? How do I get to see that I'm divine embodied? And how do I get to witness it? And what are the different journeys or different paths of different people that are getting to that experience? Since we say everyone has their own continuously evolving experience in this and in every other physical iteration. And so some of those who are building up so much of that outward attention that they cannot handle it anymore, that they are not sometimes thinking that there is no other way but change completely the gears and refocus in a new life experience, are always with an opportunity such as the wonderful being that you're talking about. In other words, it is not that anyone has saved him or that anyone is saving anyone else at this moment. It is only that at that moment, on the verge of that experience, you get to experience something else, and then you have the choice. In other words, you might not be seeing it in your experience as much, and because you were not seeing it, you keep pressing the question and the question and the question and turn it into a problem after problem after problem. And when it's time for you to release all of that, you have an option either to re-emerge or to continue. And that's why so many are calling these near-death experiences. They're calling them being reborn, because that perspective is completely new. That is not the same experience in the same person that was there. And in that rather drastic fashion, it might seem to you that this happens only to some. But we want to bring to you that this rebirth that you're bringing to this conversation is happening to you every moment of every day, all the time. In other words, you're always in a new perspective. You're always in a new position of your uniqueness and individuality. You're always having that experience to be new, whether you are newly choosing more of the similar or the same, or something that is completely different. And while you here and there experience it, your tendencies usually keep you within some of the habits that you have along the way. But you can experience the new feeling of rebirth every morning you wake up. You can experience it as you're shifting from one segment to another segment of your day. It does not need to be there only around milestones of birthdays or decades, or Kosta today's learn from his parents that his aunt and uncle are celebrating within the next few weeks 50 years of being married. In other words, these bigger milestones tend to tell you within this age to this age you are this, from this age to that age you are this, from that age to the new age you are this. In other words, when you get to see that you are having that experience all the time, you do not need to go into such extreme situations. But sometimes a little bit of a pressing on a question is nothing to worry about. And so everyone with their own evolution has different experiences and different ways of getting to that, which you described as enlightenment. We say remembering of what you are, wider perspective embodied, and then consistently being able to see it. And so what we want to bring to your attention to someone like this person you're bringing up can be on a brink of re-emerging, coming to the perspective of focus as a new person, reborn person. But what we want to bring to attention is that to maintain that stature, to maintain that feeling of a completely newness, there is work to be done every day with a consistent emphasis, with a consistent awareness of who you are. So it is not that you shift and now there is nothing for you to do, and it's on autopilot, because autopilot gets you predominantly to be having the experiences of focus outwards. And so, but you understand that there is nothing going on that's automatic or on autopilot anyway. That you at all times are guiding your experience, your vessel. You're the captain of your own physical vessel, you being the light behind the lenses, not a physical being that somebody else is pulling the strings for. And we understand this quite often sounds as a conceptual thing. It sounds as a nice story to so many, and we agree it can only be experienced. But when you hear even the evidence of others giving you the glimpses, you point yourself into discovering this evidence in your own experience. Then you really become that which is a seeker. That is when you really look for more wider perspective while you're physically focused. You find any tool to get you to the steady perspective where your physical faculties, and by that we mean your mind, your body, your thoughts and the emotions, are so balanced that you're in that enhanced perceptive state so you can experience that which is different, wider dimensions of life. Everyone has this opportunity. Everyone is constantly moving towards experiencing more and more and more of this. And while we understand that you can measure it up by your attention outwards, we can assure you that everyone is looking for that which you often can refer to as being full-fledged human being. The divine part of you and the physical part of you are dancing together at all times. And it's not that you were eternal before and after. You are eternal now, and the now and the now. And how much of that you get to see and you get to experience gets to be up to you in your own unique to you, so unique to you, question, answer, question, dance, that no one else, even you from a moment ago, can experience the same thing. Really satisfying conversation. Go ahead.
Okay, hello, this is Raven. Good to see you. It's been a little bit. So I've been feeling into financial prosperity and financial abundance and feeling the vibration within me. And one thing that I've been noticing as I become present to that vibration is that I have a wobble around. It feels to me like when somebody is very wealthy, that they are then utilizing others' skills, people's skills and stuff like that, because they whatever, they want to go to on a nice cruise, or they want to go traveling, or they want people to help them, like staff or whatever, because they are more well off. And I'm noticing that I have a bit of wobble around feeling like for example, on the cruise that we just went on, we had a cabin steward, and that person was sharing that they literally have no time off for like 7 months, and have like 2 hours a day to have time off. Now, I understand that they chose to do that, and I can't get like the Abraham thing of like, you can't get sick enough to make somebody else well. So I understand that aspect, but it still feels a little bit like not equitable somehow. Like I feel the disconnect there, because I love the idea of being wealthy and abundant even more than I already am. And I can feel that, but at the same time, it feels like it's kind of at others' expense.
Well, what we want to bring to your attention is that this feeling of you not matching your feeling of abundance by what you're observing is that you started taking your head out of the sand for a little bit. In other words, oftentimes you might not feel as abundant, and you're looking to find a way to feel abundant, and then you find a way to feel abundant, and then even that abundance is not satisfying to you because there is something else and something more. Now you have an option to continue doing your abundance, experiencing your abundance, and we like to say keep the head in the sand. In other words, you do your processes to get you to steady, you apply it, you apply it, you apply it, and you keep having it. And then when you notice some of those things, you say, well, covered mirror, covered mirror, covered mirror, because it is not as, I do not want looking into these experiences of people who might be suffering or not being as satisfied or feeling as abundant as I feel right now. I do not want that to affect me, because I do not want to lose my abundance. And we say you can have it all. You can be so abundant and so inclusive in your abundance, where you do not sense that you are creating your abundance from a survival position, from a survival mode. We recently started talking about that which is very few things are survival for you. In other words, a little bit of food, a safe shelter, and predominant part of the planet is having this experience already, or if not very well in direction of that. We would say at least a little bit more than half a planet. And so as you're having that experience, everything else becomes abundance for you. Everything else becomes bonus for you. All of the other things and all of the other desires that are coming your way. But so often you might be feeling that you are to bring that survival mode because you saw so much evidence that because you make it as I need to have this or else I will be unhappy, I need to have the abundance or else I will not be happy. In other words, you bring that into the processes and the creations and desires that really do not have much place for you at that time in a perspective of survival. And this is why this nuance is present within you, and that is what's matching you with the awareness of others too. And so when you get to release and you see that your abundance is really coming from your desire to play, from saying all of my basic necessities are here, how I can include more in my experience, from that abundant place that has little to no survival part embodied in it, you are able to see others in that perspective too, even when they don't see themselves in that perspective too. And then that does not throw you off, because you don't have within you that perspective predominantly like you used to have. And so you go, I feel so abundant, I feel so rich, I feel so empowered by this, and I will observe everyone who comes as a match here to play with this. And I know that I'll be seeing some of those who feel even more abundant than me by working 14 hours a day, because the alternative before was something else. And there will be so many of those who are still having that survival mode, even though they do not need to be feeling it. In other words, I will notice that for them as well as for me, they're also playing the same game of understanding that once their basic necessities are taken care of, everything else is the abundance. And as I'm figuring it out, as I'm receiving more resonance with that, I can then sense and I can get excited for them to find that for themselves too. And so when you get to observe things from this perspective, from a little bit different, wider angle, you are then not thrown off by somebody's poverty or by somebody's sickness because you're afraid you're gonna get there yourself too. You feel so steady within your own experience that you can include these situations and scenarios, knowing that you will know exactly when is the time to put the head in the sand again. But when the survival mode is not active within you, and it takes really a little bit of practice to see it this way, abundance starts flooding through you, and then you start seeing others who are catching in on that too, on that with you too, and they start asking you questions, and they start knocking at your door, and then you soon enough start having an inspired way of sharing with them your story, and without implying anything, holding the steady for them so they can see how ready they're to join into your abundance too. This is what really is what Jesus was doing. We often refer back to this, but you holding the steady and someone seeing it in any case does not mean that you need to be thrown off. We say you all can do it. We say you all want to do it. You all want to experience inclusiveness, that it's not really about the conditions, that it's not about even the preference of do you like to hang out with an abundant person or not such an abundant person. The only time this will trigger you if you still have it within your experience some way interwoven. And then if you still do, we say you're doing the right thing by keeping the head in the sand. But if you truly feel abundant, you can see how inclusive you can be in your abundance, and therefore start sensing how with a little bit of practice, keeping selfish to be selfless, meaning being selfish to get to steady so you can be inclusive of others, you get thrown off less and less and less and less into the emotion of that which is their situation, but rather see them more from your wider divine and therefore their wider divine perspective.
Thank you so much. I got so much from that, like so many different things. So thank you so much.
Really, really excellent conversation. Go ahead.
Awesome. That was great. So I'll start with the general question, and then I'll kind of explain a little of my understanding of that, and we can clarify together. So the general question is how long it takes for something to manifest. And from what I've come to experience through teachings and my own life experience, I understand that the non-resistance is such a key factor into having a desire that's pure, that you just allow to come in. And where I get a little wobbly is the sense of momentum and wanting to increase something, and understanding the fine line of focusing on it in a way that feels allowing, which amplifies, or you could be focusing on it feeling resistance and you're actually slowing it down. So that part is clear to me, but I sometimes wonder, and this is a should, which is probably part of the problem, but should I allow myself more time, if it's feeling good, to focus upon a desire so that it can come faster? Or is the secret really, if you've gotten a desire into a pure place, you can just allow that to be enough and it has to come? There's a little bit of how much of that deliberate creator and using my thought to allow it to come, how much of that comes into play versus I've done the question and now I'm just ready to receive the answer and I don't have to do anything else to receive it. So what is that dance and that fine line of the active participation? Because sometimes being a deliberate creator, I'm ready to get in there. And then I think sometimes I got to make sure I'm fully aligned if I want to get in there. So how do we separate that? And how do we just get into that allowing mode, but have enough of that action that is inspired to take it further?
Well, we will start in a perspective that you observe and choose and make the preferences along the way. And when you get the clarity of what is your desire, you get the clarity of wanting, and we say you observe and choose, and catch the wave of your wanting. Once you know what is the clarity of the wanting, then it's time for you. Sooner you release it, sooner you don't pay attention to it, you can then discover it in your reality. You cannot have... Now we understand that your focus on clarifying the desire takes some time, and your focus about sifting and sorting, will use wonderful analogy often referred by Abraham Hicks, sifting and sorting, observing and choosing, making preferences. But once you do get the clarity of your wanting, you want to give your attention to it just enough that on that topic for some time you're not going back to observe and choose or sift and sort. And so when you get that preference and clarity of wanting, if you stay there too long, it is not that you being in a clarity of wanting is the trouble at that stage. It is the trouble that you shift back towards measuring up how far are you in seeing it in physicality. So observing the gap is really what gives you trouble and brings you back to observe and choose, and then you get the clarity of wanting. So you have a conversation something like this. Well, I've been making preferences and I know what I want, but then I find myself still measuring that I don't have it. And when I measure that I don't have it, I'm still looking at other things that I don't really want. And then I shift myself back at some point. I meditate or quiet my mind or appreciate, and I shift myself back to that. Well, now when you were focused on other things, you were back into observe and choose. And so you bring it back to clarity of wanting, and then you hold it, but at some point you want to start measuring, and we say the how part of the equation comes once you fully are ready to release the clarity of the wanting, your desire. You cannot be observing desire in its idea form, in its idea non-physical form, meaning you cannot observe the idea and have the experience of the idea in reality at the same time. So something's got to give. And so you want to give and release the clarity of the wanting, and then allow yourself to observe and follow your inspiration to act that will take you to this step and this step and this step. In other words, this how and this how and this how, until you can see your physical manifestation of that which once was your desire. In other words, clarity of wanting, you wanting something, is still not in that frequency, often referred to vibration, oscillation of that which is the actual experience of it in your physicality. And so you get the clarity of what it is. Here is you've contemplated enough through observation and choosing. Now you have the clarity as a result of that contemplation, and now you release it so you can see where it is. And we want to say to you that it's a natural process for some of the bigger desires for you to have multiple observe and choose, so you can clarify that question. Because we want to bring to your attention, and we've said it a few times, but not as clear as we will do for you and everyone else on this call right now. you continue massaging, forming your question, and when it's really there, that question, with such clarity, you have instant manifestation. All of the manifestations that you see in your physicality are really instant manifestation. It is just that you do not see, because you might be remembering the first time you acquired about something else, but all of the preferences along the way have been putting more details and more nuances around it that you did not pay attention. So you remember that you thought this, that you clarified, that you gave birth to this desire on August 1st, and then you receive it on December 1st, and you think that this question from August 1st is what brought you this desire. And we say the question that's fully formed and then released is always instantaneously right before. In other words, right before you receive it in physicality is fully formed, because question and answer are one of the same. When you have the clarity of the question, there is an answer, even in physicality, instantaneously. This is how it's happening at all times. It is when you understand that you're in a dance of clarifying the question. And so you said, let's talk about this general question. We say this is the most specific question we ever received in a format like this since Kosta and Armand started flowing what they're flowing. And so what we want to now give you as an example from their experience is that their big desire, Kosta's especially big desire to become a parent, was so present from the moment they met that he brought this up to Armand on their first date, the second date that they knew of each other's existence in this physical iteration. And so as he was sharing this part and made sure that Armand also wants kids, and that was clear, that was quite often the topic. They had the clarity that they want them. In other words, there was nothing more about observe and choose over there to happen. The clarity was there. But every time they would speak into it, every time the friends would remind them of that story, they would get more into how we're going to do this, and where are we going to do this, and when is it going to happen, and who are we going to be collaborating with on this, what clinic, in what state. In other words, all of these questions kept coming in, and therefore continued clarifying for them. And so their original clarity that they want kids on March 2nd of 2014 still keeps being regrouped, remolded, reshaped, but now they can see some evidence about it. Up until last November, it seemed that there was almost no movement, such minimal movement that evidence of it was disheartening to Kosta quite some time. But at some point, they realized it's time to release all of the questions about this, and then things started flowing through so clearly that what they thought will be a year or year and a half long process has happened within the 3 months with such an astounding speed that they are now really so excited to be watching the show and be observing what they have created before. And so when you get the clarity of the question, you're experiencing immediately. When you get to be comfortable, when you are understanding this process the way we're bringing it to you for the first time in such a succinct way, then you are really excited to continue molding the question and making the preference, knowing that even when you receive the manifestation of it, it is only the starting point of you formulating that which is the new preference and new question along the way, whether it's on that topic or any other topic. For as it does not matter what topic is at hand, you're either in part of the creation process closer to the question or part of the creation process closer to the answer. And so when you're asking the questions, you can create so many things on so many topics. And when you're receiving abundance or manifestations, you can receive it at all times. In other words, all of them equally valuable, all of them available to you at all times. And so with a little bit of practice, you get a hold of this, that all of your what, when, where, and with whom is the part, all of these questions are the part of you clarifying that which you want. And once you clarified what you want, and here's the piece you were asking for, if you ask yourself why you want it, you will get sooner to release that clarity. We say you release your desire. You're not really releasing the desire. You're releasing your attention from desire so you can look elsewhere to experience and embody that desire in your physicality. When you clarify what and when and where and with whom, when you get that clarity of wanting and focus on why, you're rather quick to release it and enjoy all of the hows that come along the way. And here is this concert that happens, this thrilling concert that happens between you and you in different perspectives, and then you cannot have enough. That is the most potent question that brought the best explanation we've ever gave about that which you named deliberate creation.
Wow, to just wrap that up and sum that was it. That was so it. So clarity of the question, when you feel you have that, it seems the last ingredient then is almost like you want to leave that question in a feel-good space, right? Because if I'm still feeling resistance in any way to that question, then that means
and that last part of the resistance, hangs in that part of your wanting, holding on to that desire. Well, I worked hard by observing and choosing, or I was making preferences, and now I know what it is. Where is it? And we say, you ask yourself why, you will immediately soften up your opportunity to go back to observe and choose, and it will happen rather quickly. You are not in this physical experience to predict the hows. You're in this physical experience to perceive through your physical senses and be both the creator and the creation that you are continuously creating. You have a role in all of it, and you can be directing all aspects of your creation, not only getting to perspective of steady, but also the process of asking the questions through softer stages of curiosity and wonder, and not so much of that which you're naming resistance.
Thank you so much. That was so great.
So many layers these few conversations brought up. Go ahead.
I feel like that really, thank you, Patrick, because I feel like that gave me an answer to the question I didn't even really know I had. But I wanted to ask you...
Well, let's just, before you get there, we're going to quickly just talk about this for a moment. When you start looking around in your observe and choose, in your outwards attention, so many times you pick up so many desires that you think you want but you don't really want them, and then sometimes you don't give attention to those desires or to those questions that you want the answers to, because they kind of fall into the mix. And we say, when you keep asking why after why after why after why, you get the clarity. Is this really even your desire, or are you trying to convince yourself that this is your desire? When you get in tune with the clarity of the wanting does not need to be yours per se. You might inherit that by observing and wanting to be part of something else or somebody else. But when you ask yourself why, and you have the clarity of that resonance, first you know that it's your desire, and when you know that it's your desire, then you're so easy to release it, because then you do not care how you're going to get to experience it. That's the part you get thrilled about to discover.
Yeah, that, like, the why piece feels so huge for me, because I've been noticing like tons of desires bubbling up, specifically around the topic of travel and participating in events that, you know, all my friends are participating in. And some of them, I keep pressing for an answer, like a literal clarity on like what date to book the flight, or, you know, what airport even to fly out, so on and so forth. And it doesn't feel right. And I feel like it's even a few steps back that I need to go of like, why do I even want to do this, or is it my desire?
When you get that clarity about something that you want to give attention to, this why will really sort it out for you. When you allow yourself to get the clarity of wanting and then check in with your why, you really see also how eager you are about this, how eager you are to release this desire that was never yours, because sometimes you get into a habit of getting into it, and it might not, so much energy coming through from your conversation. You might not be ready to release all of your attention from it. In other words, you don't have to get enlightened from these kind of experiences overnight. But what we're trying to say is that you get the clarity of what is what, and then you start even seeing the gradient, the list. The word that we're looking for is, you look in the order of the priority for you, or in the order of the importance for you for some of those desires. And not only that some are more important than the others, but you start receiving the order in which you want to release them into your physicality too. Well, it doesn't get more deliberate than that.
Hey.
And so what was your real question?
I think you answered it.
We know, we were just teasing you. Really excellent conversation.
I think there was a lie. I think you answered it, Patrick. Thank you so much.
Really, really great talks. Go ahead. We're ready.
Yes, okay, so I would like some further clarification and guidance about kids. So I have this desire, I have a dream, like Martin Luther King said, that little kids can grow up having more limitless beliefs, more of an infinite self-awareness, as well as the self and the dance. And I do this with my kids, and they are amazingly receptive to it. And I'm just curious about the idea of gradual growth and expansion, as well as stages of development, because for the most part, even my 4-year-old responds to these concepts and these notions of inclusivity and empowerment. And even my 4-year-old responds to it as well, especially my 7-year-old blows my mind with his receptivity and his application constantly of engaging this broader perspective, even for things that seem impossible, you know, like wanting to change the weather or, you know, a million things. But for my 4-year-old, things like, you know, wanting not to share. For instance, I grew up being told by my grandmother and my mom that you should never tell a little kid to share, like push them to share, because they're developing their ego, their individuality. But I'm not so sure if this is the case, because I feel that they are so receptive to this notion of inclusivity that I do want to maybe push a bit on this and say, no, it's okay to share, and when you share, you actually have more, and there's no scarcity, there's no lack of anything, there's infinite of this, you know, and they do understand that, and they say, okay, but I'm just curious as to whether there is a stage or a gradual process that I might be skipping or, you know, not allowing to blossom by being a little bit too, you know, too expanded as far as their consciousness.
Well, what we want to bring first to this conversation that you offered is that you're doing a great job with being aware what's leading the newer generations, for as they have a fresher perspective than you, as you have a fresher perspective than your parents, as your parents had a fresher perspective than their parents. And so first we want to bring to your attention that this which you see in them as a consequence of that which you lived was only possible because of the movement you made in the evolution, and that which you've been experienced was possible only because what your parents made in their part of the evolution. And sometimes you might even want to measure up and say, well, this doesn't seem right anymore, this is really what's new, and doesn't really work as much, and this is really what's new. And we say your kids would lead all of that. They will really, if you tune into them, will tell you exactly all of the upgrades that they got along the way as they came into this physical focus, and they will show you these new layers, as you describe them, as not only inclusivity but also blendedness. And this, it feels like a child's play for them, very appropriate, them being children, to have this blended perspective of not losing their awareness or remembrance that they are wider perspective embodied, and then asking the questions at all times. And so once you have that foundation, that everybody has been doing their best in their own evolution, and you witnessing what you see now is that you're not satisfied like so many generations before have been. And this is the case with you and then so many more generations that are coming in. They do not want to play in such extremes as so many generations did before. They're observing, making preference about that. But before we get into more details there, we want to bring to your attention when somebody comes in a new vantage point of their physicality, they're predominantly unfocused. They're predominantly aware of their divinity. And then they're stretching and forming that which is self portion of that. So the ego is not the problem. The being selfish is not a problem. Being aware of the borders of you is not a problem. That's why everybody comes into the physical experience, so you can express more of that which you are from a wider perspective through your physical action and blendedness. You feel fullness of that which you often refer to as non-physical perspective through your physical perspective. And so you came in to have this border and then to find from there how to maneuver around and feel more and more and more of that limitlessness within your experience of physicality. And generation after generation keeps coming there further and further and further. And so your kids are now leading that compared to you, and their kids will continue to lead. We talk generation about generation, but it's not really like that. It is really with every single new physically focused child, this continues to move on. And so your kids are already behind in that sense of all the new kids that are being born yesterday and a few years ago in terms of that freshness of a perspective in its width. This is why kids need to sleep a lot. This is why kids need time to form their physical form and their borderlines. But what you're talking about is how do I go about having them not go to be so dense in their physicality and perspective of self, so they forget this wider perspective. And we say, if you are having this perspective that you do already as their parent, that means that you hooked up on that which they already know, which means they have been asking you to know what you know, so you can support in your steadiness that which is their more balanced focus, unfocus, question, answer, unfocus, focus, answer, question, dance. And so they're guiding you along the way, and you are guiding them along the way. And we say there's really, from what you described, nothing to worry about, but to be aware, knowing that they will want to stretch the physicality of their limits because they want to break them, because they want to see even more of that which is inclusivity. And so this comes from a perspective of fully wide unfocused, coming and settling in and then stretching the borders of the focus, but that you do not have to go and try to make it concrete by your opinions and about your judgments and about your beliefs and about your expectations, no matter how positive or negative they feel. What your kids are showing you, their inclusivity comes from an opportunity to see it from fresh perspective all the time. They do not remember their friends or holding the grudges from even 15 minutes ago, a little less from 2 years ago or 5 decades ago, because they have that perspective as they continue to focus outwards, that they're using their intellect and their mind to take care of what their survival is, for what their basic necessities are, but everything else is a wonderful discovery of their limitless perspective that's currently embodied within the boundary of physicality. We know sometimes you don't want to hear that your physicality has a boundary, but it does have a certain form, and then you, within your own steadiness, in your own evolution, choose how much of that boundless you emanate through you. This is why somebody comes in and you say they light up the room. They forget about their boundary. They even forget about their identity at the time. They forget about anything that's holding them, but just broadcast the light. And so when you see your kids like this, you say, I see this as a result of collective evolution of humanity, even more precisely on my line of ancestors and now my descendants. I see how brilliant this is and how many timelines I can access at the same time to really be aware of what's going on here. Then you thank your kids, then you thank your parents and all the other ancestors, and you settle in the perfection of your now, knowing that there is really nothing to worry about, especially when you're seeing as much of evidence of that inclusivity as you've just described to everyone on this call.
Thank you. I'll leave it at that because that was just perfection. No, nothing else to add to it. Thank you so much.
Really, really, really brilliant conversations today. Go ahead.
Thank you. I've been deliberately focusing and enjoying on the part of the process of feeling, of experimenting and getting better and better at mastering that part of the process, and really would appreciate any tips and techniques. This shifting to why is a great one already. I feel like my question already got answered, but dancing between this observe and choose and clarity, more clarity, more clarity.
Well, we want
any tips for any part of the
we
process?
want to bring your attention that there is a clarity of the question and the clarity of an answer, clarity of formulating the question and clarity of receiving the answer, clarity of you creating your desire and clarity of embodying it in manifestation. Those are the clarity moments, but the moment you have the clarity of question, you're discovering an answer. The moment you have the sensation of manifestation, you're discovering the new question. And while you're on a place of massage, you're constantly really dancing between the question and the answer and answering the question at all times, sometimes experiencing manifestations and sometimes experiencing that which is often called launching of desires. But what we want to bring to your attention is, you said that I'm deliberately focusing on my emotion, and we say all of those aspects you described are part of the physical part of you. In other words, your thoughts and your emotions are the physical indicator of your physical experience. Your mind, body, thoughts, and the emotions are that physical part. So once you understand that the emotion is in the part of observe and choose, using the emotions to help you clarify the question, to help you clarify the desire, it is by asking why that you can release that part of emotion, which is the last part to be released before you can see it in physicality and then joyfully re-engage in the experience of emotion again. We want to bring to your attention that regardless of it being positive or negative emotion, that is 99.999 part of your experience within your own physicality. But the moment of the clarity of the question and the moment of the clarity of receiving the manifestation has no emotion in it. In other words, you're in this state of not really even being in your body when you get aha moments. You're not really, you may have followed sensation in your physical body, but the clarity of the question and clarity of the answer are beyond the thought and the emotion and the mind and the body that are your physical vessels for experience. And so you observe and choose, observe and choose. You ask the whats, you ask the whens, you ask who wids, you ask wheres, and then your emotions help you sort those preferences, and you have the clarity of the wanting, and then with your why you soften up even the positive part of the emotion about it, so you can tip in a direction of seeing it, and then you start discovering. And when you receive that in your experience, that clarity of answer just prompts you to have another go and another go and another go and another go. And so your deliberate part can be 99.99999% of the experience. And that part, not only in a part of you deliberately unfocusing to receive the answer, but deliberately opening the door to engage into a discovery of the new question too. Once you do not make that much of a difference between positive and negative emotion, preference and non-preference, this condition or that condition, then you get to choose more of what you really prefer to experience to begin with.
Hello, newbie here.
Go
Hello
ahead.
to everyone. So I have been on a very deep healing journey for pretty much since the pandemic, and been in complete hermit mode doing my work. And I feel more aligned now with what I'm here to do and what I'd like to do. And I appreciate some of the previous questions because they helped me a lot to gain some understanding. What I wanted to ask is, I know that it's time for me to step out and kind of shine my light and share what I'm doing, but there is also this deep, almost a little bit of fear, because it's almost like I'm going to step out and would be completely naked in front of all of these people that I don't know. So my question is, am I in a place where I'm possibly self-sabotaging what I'm really here to do because I'm just so fearful?
Well, we're going to start at a perspective that there is nothing that you're here for to do. You've just gotten to the perspective, as we talked to a friend before, that you can feel so abundant in your steadiness, not only in your money, but abundant in the sense of steadiness. Your hermit couple of years, putting the head in the sand, isolating to get to your steady, they go just so far. Kosta today talked to his long-term student of dance and partner of 12 years, and they talked about different things. She's retired now but still doing some work, and her husband is doing some work, and she said that when her husband retired for 6 months, he didn't want to do anything, and then at some point he regained that steadiness and was eager to go and play, and now he's finding some other job even though he doesn't really need the job for anything per se. So we're comparing this with your situation because oftentimes you took advantage of the global stop that happened for some time, looked within and made yourself priority. And this is the only reason why you're now feeling that there is light to share. And so you want to celebrate that aspect first, because this is the biggest part. Without you being selfish to be steady and for you to be predominantly in perspective of one or wider perspective, there is really nothing to shine, because you cannot shine that which you are in a part of the question. You can be part of somebody else's question formulating, or you can be part of somebody else's receiving of an answer too. But what you want to find is now understanding that it is not that you've gotten it and when you get out you will either lose it or keep it, because you coming out in a perspective of steady is for you to continue doing your processes of what keeps you steady and what gets you inspired to share with others. What you're saying is, I feel so steady that I'm ready to include others regardless where they are in their creation process. And we say nothing more satisfying to do so. But that does not mean, if you found the steady, that you have eliminated all of the questions along the way. And so now it's time for you to embrace not only this part of the creation process that you've mastered, how to soothe sometimes or soften up the questions so you can get to steady, but you are now looking how to keep that steady as you start including others. And we say, you do not need to wait for those questions to come or to bring some kind of discomfort or fear. You can, from that perspective of steady, open the door and say, I'm ready to be curious. I'm ready to be wondrous. I know I have tools to get to steady at all times. And when I do so, when I do feel steady, I will include and I will open the door for the trouble of formulating the questions. I will include others that might not be in this perspective of steady. And predominantly to shine the light. Sometimes I'll be shining the light and somebody will be shining the light back at me. And sometimes they will not come with so much ease, but I will be so steady and I'll keep my attention of that which is inclusion of others for as long as I keep steady. And when I feel like I'm running a little bit out of the gas, I'll excuse myself and go do my practice that puts me back to steady, and then I'll be ready for the next round and the next round and the next round of inclusion. What we want to say is you did not reach the destination from which now you can include and go on autopilot. You have reached the feeling of where you are and where so many want to be, but now to include them, you continue pedaling, because even the most beautiful swan on the lake, no matter how graciously looks effortless in their perspective of that which is steadiness on the top of the quiet lake, are pedaling with such thrill in their action, with their feet underneath, that you would never even think that such coherence, that such combination is possible at the same time. We want you to be as steady and calm as a swan or as a wonderfully active duck in a calm lake, also keeping your steadiness even when the tides show up, because other swans or ducks might be a little bit misbehaving.
That makes so much sense. I love the analogy. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to mention from the second this conversation, this entire thing started, my right ear has been popping like crazy. So
you said what is popping?
My right ear has been popping for this entire conversation.
It's time to shake things up here. Really excellent conversation.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Hi, Weola. Gosh, even since we even have talked earlier today, I've been receiving so much. And I really wanted to ask you to speak about worthiness. And I wanted to talk about how it seems like it's so easy for us as humans to believe in our...
That's what it is. This is what it is. It's so easy for you to believe. And we say you hold on to your beliefs, negative and positive, as you hold on to thoughts, as you hold on to emotions. And in the process of holding on, there is no smoothness of the dance. In other words, when you leave your opinions and judgments and beliefs and expectations to be flexible, you are not then trying to switch one thought process for another thought process. In other words, you're not trying to say, I have a dent in this pipeline of thinking and these thoughts keep going in this way, so let me dig another dent on the other side for the thoughts that feel better. And we say that's going to work just for a certain amount of time, because even those thoughts that are feeling better, more you go to experience them, you're still experiencing the dent that you've created, because the dent always will have some amount of that which is resistance in it. And we say you want to be going in and out of the thoughts and opinions and beliefs and things, see things the way they are, taking them at the face value, not remembering your friend from 5 years ago that you didn't see and then being shocked why they did not change or why did you not change and they did, but allowing yourself to really measure up in the moment only, but then leaving the measurement not to become statistics. It took Kosta years and decades to give up on his favorite thing in the world, which is spreadsheets and statistics and all of the evidence of what was before, which we understand sometimes makes you believe that there is, sometimes make you sense through your belief that there is the ground, that it's dense and stuck and nothing is moving, and we say everything is always in the movement. Think just about the last few years, or look into the awareness of the movement even on the planet that you're living, knowing that everything is going so many miles per hour at all times. And therefore, when you try to densify and solidify something that's going to not change for some time, this is what feels to you like not feeling worthy, because you're not dancing, you're measuring extensively.
Yes, yes. Can you also talk about our birthright of worthiness?
Well, your birthright has nothing to do even with any kind of emotion, including the worthiness. In other words, your birthright is to see who is who in a creation process, see that you're a light behind the lenses, and go about all parts of the creation process with equal satisfaction, with equal value, with equal gratitude towards and appreciation towards. And therefore, you feeling worthy or not worthy, you look at both of those aspects equally, because when you're not worthy, you get the clarity of the question. When you're worthy, you feel you feel receiving of the answers. When you're not worthy, you are focused too much. When you feel worthy, you get to unfocus. In other words, all of these emotions that you have, so many, we like to talk about them in general terms because it's easier for you to feel the gradient of the intensity of the emotion, and then you can name them in any way that you want. But all of the emotions are either positive or negative, either that which is expression of love or expression of different amount of fear, or comfort and discomfort, or satisfaction and dissatisfaction. In other words, sometimes you get a little too technical about all of those places, because when you try to be in any kind of a range or any kind of specific position in a specific emotion, you might be thinking, well, now I'm doing great, and now I want to stay here, and now I've cleared the level so I cannot fall on a previous level. And we say all of it is always available to you. So when you get to see, as we often say several times even today, that you're the light behind the lens and not the lens itself, this is really what we mean by saying that this is your birthright, experiencing physicality. It takes some practice. It takes that which is consistency. But you're knocking at the door of that at all times. Even you being on this call, you are really having that which is the experience of being so much closer than so many. And that can really release that which is measurement that sometimes bounces you off in variety of emotional states.
Yeah, you just answered everything that I want to do. Thank you. Thank you.
Really excellent. Swift conversations. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Hi, I have a question. I'm also relatively new, so I might not be familiar with a lot of the concepts, but
well, we want to bring to your attention that you're familiar with all of this, and Kosta is very confident in this, knowing that anyone can stand in front and use any terminology wherever they are within their own awareness of their own creation process and flow the right words, because we want to bring to your attention that this is you flowing exactly the words that you might not have access to on your own at all times. And so it will be very much appropriate whatever lingo you might be using at the time.
Thank you so much. So the question I have is, I guess I would like some guidance on what can I be doing different when it comes to the wobbliness that I'm experiencing between my inner being and my physical health. What is it that I can do to maintain the physical health, the steadiness in the physical health consistently? Because I've had this journey, since 2005, near-death experiences, a lot of different issues, very stormy physical experiences. And last year I was able to get out of that storm in a very natural way with a lot of positive feelings and emotions, and heal what to many doctors was unthinkable. But then recently started experiencing a resurfacing of that. And I was, I guess I'm just wondering what can I do different, and what went wrong in that experience?
Well, there is nothing really wrong that's happening here. It is that you've had certain experience. You said, well, I had so many situations, and we say, and yet you're still here. And yet you're interested to play from this specific perspective that you're in and see how much more you can experience it. And so if you've done it once, you can do it a million times. Kosta always likes to bring as his example, one of his godmothers that had a condition, a serious condition, since she was very young, and continues to have some resurfacing that happens here and there, but she always goes back to the gratitude and appreciation and positive thinking for as much as it goes there. And we're saying it is not that you're here to eliminate anything. You're here to be reminded of options that you have. And you say, well, up for a certain year and the amount, I've gotten myself to shift. I've shown myself the evidence that I can do it and that I can have different experience in my bodily condition. And all it takes now is to continue practicing it so I can bring it back on. In other words, the only reason why any condition will ever come back is when you are sensing it will come back when you are having the experience of believing that you need to eliminate something. And we say, you did not give it attention, you focused elsewhere, and that's why you had a change in your condition. That's why the new, more satisfying condition came through. So in other words, in your fear it might come back, you got back into some of the old habits of thoughts. And there is nothing wrong about it. In other words, Kosta likes to talk about his coming out experience, that he had a momentum of 15 years that was making him sick to his stomach every time he would think that he is supposed to come out. And then it took about 11 months afterwards to be shifting that little by little until eventually he released it and he did not have a problem and finally did come out. But it was not one and done type of thing. All of the evidence that you have about work that you've done, work of looking within that puts you in that perspective, is what you want to tap into, is what you want to look and see, and allow yourself to celebrate every moment. Because regardless of the condition, we at some point today started talking about predictions. You don't want to go into the predictions of the statistics of what can be bad or beating the statistics which you've already done so many times. You want to leave all of that out and allow yourself to do anything that you can to keep you in the place of steadiness and state of balance between your mind and your body, following the guidance of the professionals if they're involved, and allowing yourself to know that regardless of what kind of condition you do have or you do not have, everyone, they're physically focused, to the most innocent, healthiest children, to some who have the most really uncomfortable bodily conditions. Everyone is consistently dancing between the question and the answer, and answering the question at all times. And so it is not that you want to eliminate anything so you can experience something else. You just want to find the balance and see the value in each of these experiences. And so one of the feedbacks that you're getting from this is that it is not that you've done it and then it's automatic thing. what is really there is nothing wrong, and it can be only satisfying for you to appreciate and have the gratitude all the time, for you to do the inner work of your steadiness at all times. And so once that is satisfying part, the way it was when you first had result about it, but not looking necessarily immediately for the outcome, but for the balance of that which you're sensing right now, the outcome has to follow.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Really good conversation. Go ahead.
It's awesome.
Hi. I have not been here before. This is my first time, so
We will be easy on you. No worries.
Yeah, thank you. This is exciting. So I wrote down my question, and I know that, and I appreciate everyone who's already answered, because I feel like there are threads here, but I'll ask. I've been practicing and focusing on being easy about it, relaxing, being selfish, for steadiness and security for quite some time. And for quite a while, I've been patient with it. And now I feel a bit bored and lonely sometimes. And I wish for the well-being and the steadiness and the playmates. And lately, it seems more of the physical unwanted has come. So how do I remain patient and enjoy the now, even though the well-being and the steadiness and the playmates don't seem to be here?
Well, you just described, I got to the perspective of steady, I got to the place of ease, I had to take care of me through my selfish processes, and then at that point, when I thought that that's all there is, I wanted to go and invite something into my experience that's other than that. In other words, we understand when you get to predominantly maybe have too much focus outwards, and you might be too many questions are being asked, or too many of problems are coming in, then when you eventually find different tools to get you to steady, in other words, you start seeing there is other ways, you think that that's all it is, to catch the emotion and hold on to it, and we say that's only one part of your creation process. So you continue getting to steady and to steadiness, and then you go to see who and how you can engage with in your inclusion. And so, are you excited to ask the question? Are you wondrous and curious to discover who else you want to include into your experience, into the vicinity of you? Who do you want to interact with or engage with or talk with? In other words, you can direct that part of your creation process too. And we understand when you get to this steady place at some point, Kosta got to that perspective last year. Armand could not believe his eyes. Somebody so full of energy, enthusiastic, action-oriented, that there was so much discernment and clarity coming from all of the work that he's doing within him for his own steadiness, that he was really even telling Armand some things about what's even the purpose of this or that or this or that. In other words, it took a moment for him to regain more balance about his focus and unfocus, because steadier you get, more you want to give attention to, not less. But sometimes you might feel because you were giving attention before and things were throwing you off, it might be the same thing. And so, as the friend said, you for a couple of years become a hermit and you go in only keeping the head in the sand predominantly. We say when you find something that gets you to steady, even once or a few times per day, many tools to choose from, many tools to discover, and they all keep working for you differently, even if they're the same tools, but especially if you're changing them up. There is really no fear about who are you going to include in your other question. In other words, what are you going to discover? This is when we say you start opening up the door for the question. You invite the question. You do not wait for a question to knock at your door or to knock you over and your door because you were unfocused and then rushed into giving attention. But you're soft about it. You say, I love all of these experiences. I love knowing that I can get to steady, that I have tools to get to steady. But now, from that perspective, it seems that I take care of me, but I do not feel the life vibrancy coming through because I'm not including new movement into the experience. I will get to the steady, and from that soft place of steady and unfocus and ease and relaxation, I will milk it. I will be satisfied about it, but that will not be it. I will then softly guide myself into the focus, moment by moment, until it's time to tip that point and open the door to invite the discovery of the new question. When you are the one inviting the question to come in and not automatically reacting to it, you can respond because you are the one open the door for the experience. And then when you're responding and not so much reacting, well, then you feel that the reins of the creation process are fully in your hands.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Really, really excellent conversations.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hi, Weola. Thank you so much for doing this. I loved all the questions. I just want to say hi to my community as well. For everybody.
Speak up a little bit.
Okay. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great. So, my question is on expansion, and my money has gone into a different form. I purchased a house or a condo, and so it's not showing in the bank like it used to a lot. It's in the home, and it's gone up tremendously. Like it's gone up a lot since I just bought it a few months ago. But I'm wanting to tighten my belt. I'm wanting to stop doing things, and I keep checking. I'm finding just insecurity around this, and I haven't felt that for a long time because it never mattered. I never had a large overhead, and there's things that I didn't have to pay for. And I ended up, booking like a bunch of cruises, and I'm like, you're not being responsible. When I went on vacation 9 times in 1 year, I made more in that year, and I don't know why it is that I don't have the same attitude right now.
Well, we're gonna offer you a simple trick you can use that Kosta was using when he emptied all of the savings that was there when they bought the apartment that they're living in right now. In other words, there was money coming in. It was so exciting for money to be coming in. It was so exciting for money to flow. And they were doing so many things. Him and Armand doing so many things together while the money kept coming into the place. But then, as you said, there were no numbers. There were no numbers on that app that were showing up before that gave the confidence not to think about anything because it was there. It was there. What we want to bring to your attention is that you would not be having those experiences of abundance while that money was in the bank before it turned into a house if you were to use that money as the safety. You were excited about the new project. You were excited to turn a thought into a thing. You were excited to turn to see through your desire into the manifestation. And not only that you got that for the amount of money, but because of all of that satisfaction along the way, the moment you bought it, you added even more value to it. And so we would suggest to you, you go and write down the numbers of the value or equity that you have in your house and put it as a note in that spot of your phone. Put it as a sticker at that part of the screen of your phone where you're used to seeing those numbers, and write that number right there. And put it on your bathroom mirror if you need to, put it on your car, put it everywhere to remind you that this just shifted into another form, but it's still there. In other words, now you shifted towards scarcity because you now want to feel safe again. But we want to bring to attention you were never doing or keeping the money aside because you wanted to feel safe. You just wanted to have the experience of having a new house, so much so. And so when you tap into that experience, and when you say, look what I've done, something that took some time, such a capital investment, such it is the house, that I'll remind myself double in value or added value the moment I bought it, then since I've been doing all of this and there is the evidence of that, everything else is going to come through. And we say, instead of looking to fill up the bank account for safety, which was never the case with you, otherwise the other things would not ever be able to happen the way you describe them, you start looking into what do you want to put money in the bank next for. In other words, when you assign that which you desire, that has to show up in your bank account. But if you're there looking to keep it for the rainy days, if you do not assign the intention, in other words, if there is no movement about that money that's coming in there, if it does not have direction, and the question is, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Tells you exactly what it is. Then the flow continues directing, and then all these other things that are not maybe as big of a deal or as important continue to be there as well as the consequence of your steadiness on this topic. We want to bring to your attention that you can never go back into the steps of what you've been experiencing before. Because, as we say often to friends that have scarcity about anything that it comes to money, we say, you've had so much evidence about wonderful experiences, and you were never hungry, and you were never not having the roof over your head, and that puts you at ease. And then you emphasize that by looking and saying, and look what kind of roof I have now above my head, because I had such fun receiving the idea and then playing the game of putting a money inside the bank that was never really static. It always had the movement because it was assigned to it. You've opened up the pipeline that was flowing through consistently more and more and more, and sufficiently stayed around there so you can purchase the house, but the pipeline was always open. That's why you got to be abundant on so many other things along the way. We're going to ask Armand to have Kosta listen back to this again.
Thank you so much.
Really, really, really great conversations today. Go ahead.
Hi, Weola. Oh, it's so good to be here again to ask questions. Let's see. I'm at a place where I want to act and speak and be more authentic or be more myself, be not afraid of expressing who I am. And my question is, there's this idea that the way you are more authentic with other people is to communicate in a certain way. Like there's this method called nonviolent communication. And I'm just wondering how, and there's a lot of different, modes and suggestions on how to communicate with others so that you can connect better and be more yourself and all that. I'm just wondering, how does, knowing that words aren't, people are reading energy, but how does communication, number one, how does communication really work when we're talking about energy? We're talking about our vibration, and how do I
play with communication or feel more comfortable with the way I communicate when I'm connecting with other people, so that I feel that connection and there's an energy that allows a back and forth and a connection.
Well, first, you're not expecting in others to be guiding this. You do your own work. And when you are in a position of being steady and then broadcasting in your experiences, meaning you flowing your energy that radiates throughout you from perspective of steady, you do not need to be worrying about what kind of words you're going to use or what communication style you're supposed to use. In other words, when you get yourself to steady, and so this is what you do when you go to talk to anybody ever. You get to steady and you say, I love my own inner talk. I love dancing between my perspectives. It is really satisfying to quiet my mind. It's really satisfying to appreciate. It's satisfying to have a physical activity, to feel myself in my own body. But now when I feel so steady, when I go to interact with others, I know I will be getting different than that experience. But the most satisfying game that will go to play will be to see how steady and inclusive I can be. In other words, how much can I flow without really making that many judgments and opinions and beliefs and expectations at that very moment. In other words, I will allow flow to be longer and longer, and then processing of that information a little bit less and less and less. And you might be saying, well, are you asking me to channel? Are you asking me to have that which is the experience of not doing that which is processing of the conversations I'm hearing? And we say, yes, because this is your natural state of being, how you connect with everybody most predominantly. These experiences, when you get for a moment a little bit out of that which is your focus outwards, you do that when you're listening somebody say. But when you are speaking, there's no much necessity for you to listen back. In other words, that is the part that brings you sometimes sense of unworthiness or not being compatible, because you are processing too much. And we say, you do not need to process anything while you're speaking, because reaction of the person who is listening will tell you all. And so you flow and then you process. You flow and then you process. You flow and then you process. We say you can trust your environment to reflect back to you exactly what you are to process. But when you try to flow and the process at the same time, then you're trying to be focused and unfocused at the same time. And we say that is the loop that throws you off. This is the best way we've ever explained communication process.
So so is there a benefit to any of these methods that talk about
there is benefit for you to read about them and then see what comes through. But if the method is trying to get you to be focused while you are talking, we say ain't gonna cut it for you, because you're so much more than that.
Yeah, it feels very rigid.
Well, it feels like you're dancing between the question and the question, between observation and observation, between choosing and choosing. And we say that's a ping pong between focus and focus, and you want to have a flow and the focus and the flow and the focus. And so when you are not trying to censor yourself, and you can practice this even with some friends that you know, that you feel easier around, and at some point you're not going to censor anything. When you go to interact, even these days with Kosta, often there will be the flow that comes through that Armand would sense, says, well, this is not you talking, this is not the flow. Kosta stopped paying attention to this less and less over the last few years about that, because this dance between focus and unfocus is so natural and happening to you. And so you either speak or you listen, or you speak or you listen, or you speak or you listen, or you flow while you're speaking and then process while you're listening, and flow while you're speaking and process while you're listening. In other words, any reflection that comes back to you be beneficial. Even the weird face somebody's making while you're speaking, or the most pleasant, satisfying face that they're seeing, that you see while you're speaking to them, But that's that part of the whole communication equation too. And everyone is welcome to have their own experience as they go. Whereas when you get a little hold of this, you do not feel like you're bumping into somebody else's sentence. You know exactly when to speak and what to say. And not to please anybody in any way. Because when you are having the flow, that it's not restricted by your thinking at the moment, by the process of you trying to analyze it while you're speaking, well, at that moment, you are just flowing and flowing and flowing and flowing and flowing. And then you find yourself so satisfied about the flow of the communication. You know exactly when to leave the conversation, where to leave it. It is a most wonderful experience that you can have, because without relationships and feedbacks with anything and everyone you are giving your attention to, you would not really be able to exist. And so once you find that flow, not only within you, which is the first step with your tools to steadiness, but when you start seeing evidence of that in the communication, then the others are reflecting back to you, and you're not picking it apart. Is it good or bad? Is it positive or negative? Am I worthy or am I not? You're just taking it as a part of the whole creation process, as a valuable information, data that you're processing until you start flowing again. Take data and then flow again based off of that. This is the dance that you do within your reflections. And then at some point you get so good at this that the conversations that are happening start to confuse you for a moment, because how can somebody say exactly what you were thinking, and how can somebody say something so perfect that you could not even hear by receiving it as a direct thought through you, but you had somebody else represent a different angle of you with such perfection that you look like, it looks to you like that it is you speaking through somebody else.
Okay. All right. So the processing really is to see what the reflection is. And what else do I do with that? Just notice it, know that that's part of me or an aspect of me.
You ask and you listen. You speak and you listen. You speak and you process. You flow and you get the feedback. By being aware of the feedback, you're focused, and then the flow is naturally happening even in this conversation right now that you're having. We know maybe a little bit more easier for you, you're more susceptible to have the more ease of that flow. But that is really what it is in the essence of question answer and answer question dance too. Really, really excellent conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Go ahead. Go ahead. It's your turn.
Sorry, is it me? It's my turn?
It is you, it's your turn.
Yeah. Shit. Okay, can you hear me? The connection is a bit weak now.
We hear you great, go ahead.
Okay, I have a question about, I feel like sometimes that people control me, and sometimes if I fear this, I feel that I trigger people, and because of that I trigger people, I got triggered, and then I got some miscommunication, and of course it is me, but every time I feel that I want to grow in my life, I feel that I have to, some sort of what I've learned through another person, maybe through a coaching program or something, I have to, ask permission in order to grow to another level, so to speak. And I feel, maybe it's an old authority problem within myself from whatever. This is something that I keeps myself in some sort of a loop, that I think I slow down my evolution process in a way. And I also have the question about my finances. They fluctuate enormously, and it's really stressful. And I think, do I let myself influence myself too much by the idea that it's the money that has to cut down the flow, and maybe I should more firmly choose what I do want to stick to it, and then the financial will line up, right?
Well, this is really the same question in the answers of both things that you want to talk about. It is the steadiness between the question and the answer. You have too many ups and downs because you give too much attention outwards, and then you pull back fully within your own steady perspective on you. And we say you can be so good at using the tool that you have and then allowing yourself to be the one opening the door for a little bit of that trouble. You can never really stop or even slow down the evolution. The way that you're experiencing the evolution from your current timeline, in other words, from your current state, it is these massive strides that you go and that you're sensing within you. In other words, there is no race about evolution. There is no race about you being eternal. And so once you release that, then you're finding the most balance in your question answer dance. So then you can not slow down or not to be easier about it, but that you can be perceptive for more opportunities for that which you call expansion and evolution. And so it's not really about you trying to measure up this or measure up that. It is for you to find the steady place. And then from steady place, you can turn up the intensity, whether it's the question that you want to bring up more clarity of creating, or whether it's to turn up that which is open up the valve or all of your pipelines for the abundance to come through. It is really about this dance that it's naturally happening. It is when you feel there is a lot of resistance or there is a lot of money and then not. It is when you focus so much on one part of asking questions, every time you receive the money and any kind of abundance that comes to you is because you released that which is resistance. It's not because you pile it up and because you've been piling up the resistance and pushed through, that's why it happened. It's when you release that clarity of the wanting that you have is when it happens. Whether it's a bigger sum of money or a regular sum of money or easy way of coming in or more stressful way of it coming in, it's always at the same way. And so we often see that there is this resonance that you might need to keep that survival mode in everything because that's how you sometimes used to receive. But we say you do not need to have it. When you check in with all of your basic necessities and see that everything else is the bonus in that which you're experiencing, there is no limits to what you can experience. And there is no limit in the speed of how you want to experience it too. So we say you get the clarity through observing and choosing, clarity of wanting, and then you ask yourself, why is it that you really want it? And the moment that why is clear is when you tip the point, and then the steps show themselves up to you and you know how to show up at the exact right time, in the right place for you to be able to recognize the hows along the way of your wonderful manifestation.
Yeah, and I thank you so much. And I really think that I think too much that the structures has to come through the finances, and I limited myself through that canal because I have a lot of abundance in many ways, including having this wonderful conversation with you guys. You know, it's I don't know how I came here, how I arrived with you guys, and so many other beautiful things that come onto my path. So yes, so thank you so much for this exploration. So I understand the more I ease and the more I relax, and the easier it comes to me, right?
The moment you know that there is equal value in you asking the question and receiving the answer, you can receive more answers quickly.
Yeah, makes sense.
But when you try to eliminate the question so only answers come in, then you're trying something that you do not want to, which is to be, you want to get as close as feeling the fullness of your wider perspective in your physicality. But when you're really ready to not have questions for a moment, really not for that long, that is the time where you change completely and go into a completely new vantage point and perspective from that fresh, wide place, looking back again to be asking those questions along the way.
So, and when you have found the why, so to speak, for example, the emotion which you could experience, is it then a matter of embodying an experience, so to speak?
It is you observing, choosing, and using that which is your emotion to tell you about the preference, get the clarity about the preference. And once you have the clarity of that, asking why will remove the last part of that which is any kind of resistance, so you can tip that clarity of wanting into discovery of it in your physicality. When you ask yourself why, when you intensify the why within you, you get the clarity of what is your desire, what is truly your desire. That is the biggest blessing you get out of this question. And then when you see and recognize that that is your desire, the next time around you can, or some other time around in clarifying the question, you can release it and then see it show up in your physicality. There are so many desires that you've been thinking you might have been having it, and then seeing why they did not happen. Kosta really always thought that his desire was to be the best tennis player in the world when he was a child. He was looking up to this person from his country that was number one in the world at that time. And so her game was really thrilling. It was really a light that was shining through the little screens as she was going to compete all around the world. And then he would ask himself why that did not happen, why some of these hurdles of finance were not there at that time. He would never discover the beautiful world of dance that was that experience for him to be before. So now at this place, as he soon decides not to fully continue competing in dancing within the next number of years, has the rest of his physical iteration to enjoy the world of tennis in the same format of competitiveness, regardless of the level of the skill. And so he realized it was really about the process of experiencing and learning about that which is tennis, and he really wanted to experience it in a duration of his whole life, rather than just as a career and then switching into something else. And so when you ask, why is this what I want? Why is this what I want? As it's not coming through, you rather quickly dissolve your attention from some of those that are really not for you at that time, or not for you at all.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, thank you so much.
Really good. Go ahead.
Hello. I have so appreciated conversations today because I'm learning a lot to apply. But I'm wondering on this abundance thing, could you walk me through a specific item that I'm trying to manifest?
Yes, go ahead. As specific.
Okay, so probably for 15 years at least, I have wanted a Bernina long arm sewing machine to use for my quilting. With the computer, I know exactly what I want, I know the model, and I feel that I know the why when it comes to the creative expression and the perfection that that machine can achieve and satisfaction of creating beauty in my mind. And I have saved some money for it, but I don't seem to be able to save enough. And as I earn more money to put in my savings account, the machine is getting more expensive. And I don't know what to do to manifest it.
And so why do you want to have this machine? Are you quilting even without this machine?
I can quilt on my regular domestic machine, my regular one, but it's very, very slow. It's very, very cumbersome. And when you're talking about, like on my machine, I can sew the quilt together, but on the final finishing work, the actual quilting that I would like to do that is very detailed and just beautiful, and this ability to express creatively, I can't do that on my machine that I have. And I would love this, and I know exactly the model. I know where it's going to go in my house. I know how much space it'll take up, and I have a stack of quilts ready to put on it.
And yet your why is not clear, and intensified. In other words, you go back into observing, choosing, and measuring about the prices of all of these things, looking to justify why would you do what you're doing. In other words, this is so expensive. Do I need to go, and how do I justify spending all this money? Where is this coming from? It's not coming from your desire and from your why. It is not something that you acquired from somebody else, meaning somebody else has this machine and now I want to have it too. And it's not really my desire, but I want to have it because I want to acquire it as my desire. It is something that you've been having a thought about for quite some time. Maybe you did not have enough time to quilt. Maybe you wanted to justify that you need to get to become a serious quilter enough in order to be able to earn the right to be even thinking about buying the machine like this. And we say, you just keep intensifying the why. So let's walk you through this process. Speak to us about the process of quilting.
There are times when I find quilting to be laborious. However, as things come together and unfold, I am so tickled and satisfied at the beauty that is created through this process. I will sit and look at a finished project just for hours and lay it out because it just feels so good. And
so the process of doing it is satisfying to you. What is the part that is laborious about this?
Because it takes time. It takes time. I want it.
And so what would you
faster.
do if you had this machine that will save your time? What would you do? In other words, oftentimes you want to get to do things quicker because you want to produce more. Is this something you want to make the business out of? Is this something that you want to make a living out of? Is this something that you want to bring the efficiency so you can say that you have the latest technology so you can...
Yes.
In other words, what is this that you really want?
I will be able to do it faster and create more. I will be able to...
And so who are you creating this for?
I feel like I'm doing it for me.
Well, where are you piling up all these quilts?
Here in my I have a shelf over here that I'm...
And so how big of a shelf it can be for you to produce now 2, 3, 4 times more every day than you usually do? In other words, this savings part that you say, this stocking part that you say, in other words, if you're really focused on a process of it and you're doing for the process of it, all aspects of the process are satisfying to you, and then it's easy for you to invite more things. But you want to get things done quicker so it doesn't take so much of your time, which means you're not so much into the process as you say you are.
That's interesting because I think that is a big reason why I want to get it, is to be able to do things more quickly so that I can create more.
And therefore your joy for the process is so satisfying that you do not want to give up your joy for the whole process and the thrill that you have along the way. We're not discouraging you from buying the machine, but the time that you're not going to have trouble to see money for it is when you're not going to be trying to save something to pile up things that no one and anyone will use. But why you're going to do it is to find that in the process of it, if you're doing it for you only, what's the difference in you creating 1 piece a week or creating 10 pieces a week?
It's like going to an amazing dinner that has food from every country, and you know everyone is delicious. And I want to make every one and taste it. And there's so many beautiful creative projects that I want to make.
And so here you are looking at the buffet of things at the dinner, of all of these wonderful things that you can do, and you want to eat them all at once. Or you want to eat more than you're used to eating at once because you want to end up, and we say there's always going to be new things coming to the buffet. You cannot eat or create fast enough that you can inspire to continue to create some more.
That's true. There is more than is possible for me to create. There is more.
And there will always be more of that. So what we are trying to bring your awareness here about is, and for you to be able really to sense this, is that does not have to be an end to your quilting experience, and therefore your efficiency, your motive after efficiency is after I want this to be done faster so I can do more of it or so I can do something else. And we say you're bringing it into something that it's not really in the essence of what you described to us in the beginning, which is your desire and joy about being in the process of quilting, regardless of what the result about it is. In other words, result being the speed in which you make it too. And so you focus in a process the moment you're satisfied and loving every part of the process equally, as well as that laborious, slower part. That is the time where there will be no doubt that it's time for you to buy the machine, whether all of the money is there or not.
So the machine, and this might be my sticking point, the machine has the ability to create this accuracy that I cannot create here at my machine that I'm currently using. And I really desire to create, I mean, it's like if you draw a straight line with your pencil without a ruler, and you're drawing a drawing like an architect for to build a building. An architect will use a ruler, and the designer will use a ruler and a very clear pen. But I feel like me sewing with my sewing machine and making my project is like using a pencil without.
And we say you're looking for the end to that which is perfection, and we say perfection is always in the movement.
So I can tell I'm in the right place because I'm feeling foggy in my mind. So what headspace or feeling space do I need to get in so that I can manifest this machine, or just let go of it? And
well, you need to let go to bring it in, but you do not have the clarity of the wanting just yet around this topic. You do not have the clarity of why is it exactly why you want to have it, and that's why it's not there yet. And that's okay. That process will take a little bit of time for you to find, but the moment you have exact clarity of what is this going to be used for and how, all of the steps will show up, and you will not even care about how much money it costs because the money will flow right in for it.
Okay. All right. I still am feeling a little foggy, and that's okay. I will go sit with this why and see if I can ask an answer.
As we say, these gatherings are not only for you to receive the answer, but for you to stimulate the question. Your question is not stimulated and potent enough for you to have all the clarities that you're wanting. And you focusing on the gap of 15 years along the way is something that brings a little bit more to not be looking into this why as much as you would want to.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
That was it. Really excellent conversation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Go ahead. We'll take another question if there are some.
Mark, go ahead. Mark, unmute yourself if you're muted.
Mute. Is that better? Is that helpful?
Go ahead, we hear you.
So,
yes.
I think I don't know exactly what I want to say, but I think that what I am finding is that, like I know somebody else was talking about that, is I want this material like more and more and more and more, you know, like I did an Alaskan cruise with Abraham. I just came off of the Caribbean cruise. And then I'm finding that I am just attracted to this stuff like a magnet, and I'm choosing not to deny myself connecting with it. So, you know, it's like I am signing up for the program that Kosta and Armand are doing, and you know, I signed up for all their programs. So it's like, because I want that, and it's, okay, so I think what I'm really kind of asking is I'm finding that my life is taking on a different flow, and I'm making decisions to let go of things that don't serve me anymore, that once were the highlight of my life, like my sailboat that I'm choosing to get rid of, and that is in motion, and a extra car that I really don't need to have anymore, even though I love it. And it's like I'm just finding that, like, I go to work on a daily basis, and I just want to have simple, highly effective meetings and enjoy my day as my priority versus, quote, drilling it at work. So I'm finding I'm having I'm wanting to be in an enjoyable flow. Like, if if I'm at the grocery store or at the doctor's office or at another store or at the gas station or wherever, that I'm flitting around town being happy with the people I'm interacting with instead of grumpy, which is kind of like the old me would have been a little grumpy here, a little grumpy there, a little complaining. And it's like, I don't want to do that anymore. And it's like I look at it like there's this opportunity to be productive. So, or, to be joyful and happy and flowing and reflective of positive energy to others, because I want to do that anyway. So I have that going on. And then I guess specifically what I would kind of say is this. And so when I meditate, it seems like it doesn't seem like a weird process. I've been doing it for a year and a half, almost 2 years now, virtually every day. But I, pull in energy, and then I get in a calm space. And sometimes I spend time just thinking about, I'll maybe even sometimes I'll start by appreciating this and appreciating and appreciating and appreciating and appreciating to get myself in a really good zone. And then I just try to find that I get into this quiet space and start feeling literally this centering kind of feeling in my body. And I'll just hang out there for a while. And
then what? What happens after you find that steady place?
Well, after I find that steady place, I try to just hang out in that quiet zone. Like on the cruise, I had some real specific things drop in my head. Like I kind of had I literally had something like this happen. I had the thought of, well, if I won the lottery or won a lottery ticket, it would allow me to do what? That was one of my dinner conversations. So I thought, well, I think I better go to bed with the idea of, well, yeah.
Well, we just want to ask you, when you get to that soft, steady space and then you linger there for a moment, how do you engage in giving attention outwards?
Well, when I get to that quiet space, which I feel like is pure and clear and simple and centered and...
Well, how do you get out of that space? How do you get out of that space, and what gets you out of that space?
Well, then I almost not reverse track, but then moving forward, then I start going, well, I start thinking about the things that I want to manifest. And I start putting energies to it. So like I'll go, okay, well, I really would like to be this weight, and I take the time to visualize and focus and feel.
Well, what we want to bring to your attention is that these are two different parts of the creation process. You have some outward focus, and then you get to the perspective of steady by quieting your mind. That is the time for you to get to that perspective and linger and see what comes in as an idea. But then comes the time when you're going to give attention outwards again. And when you try to hold on to this steady feeling, to this steady emotion, to the steady vision, to the steady idea you're having, then you start introducing that which is resistance to. And so we say you get to steady, you linger in these wonderful ideas that are coming about, and you allow yourself to then be the one to open the door for the next question to come in, for the new stimulation that will bring you to discover the new question, and then to again then come to the receptive mode to see it. In other words, there is really not much that you need to contemplate by discovery of that which is what you're wanting. So when you get to that clarity of steadiness and you open the door and all of this stimulation starts coming in, but you are the one inviting it, you never get to the perspective where you feel grumpy. You never get to the perspective when you feel like you're not engaged or not energized or just wanting to sit with you. You get to that perspective when you try to hold on to the steady feeling or a positive emotion, and then you want to keep the hand in the sand. And we say you keep the hand in the sand only few times, Kosta calls it, and as you say in the program, you'll experience pillars of steadiness, where you just do this few times a day, but then you go about in discovery, discovery, not really looking to see what's gonna come and how quickly it's gonna come, because we will burst your bubble. Nobody's keeping the score.
Okay. I think I feel like that's good. I feel like that's good for now. I mean, it's like so no, what you're saying is I mean, because I'm doing that. I'm taking time in the middle of the day to take a 15-minute nap and kind of just get centered again. You know, and I kind of feel like I do that even when I get up in the morning, or even when I go to bed at night. I take the time to kind of get centered again.
Well, the trouble that gets you from what you explained, that it's not really that you do not go so alive and alert in your discoveries, because you are not the one opening the door for the discovery. Discovery finds you. The question finds you. The problem finds you. That's a whole different ball game that you're experiencing. And we say, when you go from question to the place of steady and the answer, you can be startled by the question or by the problem or by the situation, or you can be the one opening door to invite it. You're going to have a great time spending time with Kosta.
Okay, thank you.
Really, really, really excellent conversation. That's a lot of movement you just received. Really good. We know there might be some other questions, and we'll allow them to continue percolating and growing, because these open calls are not going anywhere, as well as all the other wonderful events and programs that are coming through. We want to bring to your awareness that even on this call, you've never experienced as much steadiness on a variety of topics before. But this is just the beginning of your discovery of how much more clarity you can receive along the lines of your satisfying, balanced, steady creation process, in appreciation of all of your wonderful questions that keep evolving as you do for now. That's it.